Christmas beginner scope recommendations and our wish lists on episode 514 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who enjoy looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody else who enjoys going out under the stars. So before we forget, Shane, let's give a plug for our calendar giveaway to Patreon supporters.
Yeah, so you as editor of the RASC annual observing calendar, you've got I don't know, one or two, or I'm not sure how many to give away, and we will do that by a random draw from our list of Patreon supporters. We really appreciate all of you, and we just want to give a little bit back, and this is one of the ways that we do it. And you can tune in for the January 6th episode. We'll announce the winner then at that point. So if you're already a supporter, don't worry. You don't have to do anything. You'll automatically be entered. And if you wish to be entered, just go to patreon.com and you can find Actual Astronomy there to become a supporter.
Here we go. Had someone write me on cloudy nights about my Borg 125, Shane.
Okay, well, it's somewhat of a rare scope, and I know you've had a few conversations on cloudy nights about it.
Seems to always garner a lot of attention. It's funny, and since I've had the TMB 7-inch 180 millimeter Achromat, which is quite a bit more rare. I don't think I've had any emails on that, but I still continue to get ones on the Borg 125. Okay, so Roger writes, "Hi Chris, I'm writing to you as I have been researching the Borg 125 SD scope, and I found reference that you own one. I have a 122 millimeter SV Boni or Sivboni triplet, and recently purchased a Borg Nani FL with the Kazai focuser, and just love the scope and its capabilities. This purchase put me on a path to try and learn more about the Borg 125 SD as a possible acquisition target, although they seem as rare as hen's teeth. I was wondering if you could provide some insight into this intriguing scope. There is not a lot of info on it, and it is no longer made. How is its performance, size, and weight for a 125 millimeter scope? How does it hold up compared to a more traditional f7 or f8 scope of this aperture? Also, what do you think today price would be for a good to excellent sample if found? Thanks in advance, Roger." What do you think, Shane?
Well, first of all, it's the refractor that I looked through that made me a refractor person. When I met you, you recently moved here, and we were observing, and I just couldn't believe how sharp it was, how much light throughput there was, and a nice wide field compared to what I was used to with my 12-inch light bridge. And it's a fantastic scope. And when you have it in your hands, it's hard to believe it's 125 millimeters because of how light it is. Like it's an incredible design. Everything about it is great. It's unfortunate that Borg doesn't make them anymore, because I think they'd still be selling quite a few of those if they were available.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So sort of some good and bad on them. Sadly, is that, and I think this boils down to the reason why they're not available, is that making an 8-pound, 5-inch Pentax apochromatic refractor is very difficult to get to work. And Borg is excellent. You and I both have lots of Borg scopes and even more parts than we can shake a stick at, and really enjoy their modularity, and the performance is quite excellent. However, that 125 SD definitely pushed the limits beyond what you can commercially make as a viable telescope. And what I mean by that is, sort of through nobody's fault, one of the reasons why the scope, I think when it came out, it was in the $3,000 USD range, which really shocked me, because it's a set of Pentax lenses, which are going to be pretty good, or they have a reputation. And at the time, we're still making 5-inch refractors, in particular for astrophotography. So to me, this just was something I had to have as a wide field aficionado, and to have this in a lightweight package you could take to, your dark sky site, and in a package which was as small and portable, even more so than many 4-inch refractors, and in fact, more comparable to many of the 80 millimeter apochromats at that time. But Shane, I'll tell you, it was a bumpy journey there at the start, because you with our exchange, you're into more than $3,000, and you've got to get rings, and you've got to get a few other things for it, get it mounted up, and the challenge with that scope was, from my understanding in chatting with the folks at Pentax, was that they had used an older Takahashi cell design and either scaled it up or scaled it down. I can't recall which one it was exactly. It might have been like the original FS90 cell that they scaled up, but I could be totally wrong. But it had some of the same challenges, being that it wouldn't compensate for temperature changes. And as the temperature dropped, the cell would contract at a different rate than the lenses. You see, right at that time, they changed the composition of the materials they were using to make the glass out of. And they took a lot of heavy elements and made it what they call like an eco-friendly glass, which made it more ecologically friendly, but it also changed like the expansion and contraction properties significantly of the glass.
Mhm.
And so it didn't work really well with that original lens. And so I sent that back. They tested one in a lab, sent that to me. That one was even worse.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back to them. I was like, "This one, I mean, sorry, it's even worse." And they said, "Well, we tested." I said, "Well, what temperature was the lab at?" And they said, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, what temperature was the lab was at like 20 degrees Celsius or something." I'm like, "Well, what happens when it's at -2 degrees Celsius?" So they said, "Well, I don't know." And so they put it in a freezer and took it out and tested. And sure enough, they got the same result in the next sample they just grabbed. And they were like, "Well, that's a problem." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I've been telling you that. We've gone through two lenses." So then they made me a cell for mine and sent that. And that's the one that I have. And it's beautiful and it works. And I've taken it down to like, gee, I think some of those nights, Shane, we were out, it was like -38 or something one night. And at those temperatures, it still works perfectly well. So that was it. But they basically told me when they were done, they were like, "We're done. We're not making any big lenses anymore." And they stopped. Like literally, that's when they decided they weren't gonna, because it's so difficult to make those. And in general, like there's not that big a market for them. So if they were to try to sell a temperature, like it wasn't even I don't even have a temperature compensating one. It's just larger, and the way they kind of cushion it in there or whatever they did, the magic at Pentax, it works perfectly well. But anyhow, it's a challenge. And so knowing that I may have one of the only ones that does that, I would be extremely reluctant to recommend getting a 125 SD. And I've seen this from other manufacturers as well. It's not in relation to Pentax, though they don't even make telescopes anymore. I don't think it's something that was just a problem that they ran into. There are other manufacturers that have run into this with various designs over the years, and you can go online and do some searches and find out what this looks like if you don't use a proper temperature compensating cell.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. I forgot about those cell issues that you had, and I guess that's one of the sacrifices they, or maybe not sacrifice, but when you're making an exceptionally lightweight scope, you're pushing the limits, and one of those limits was temperature, I suppose.
Yeah, and I honestly think, and I've only looked through your Borg 90FL a bit. I I really think that that's like this is like the pinnacle of Borg performance. I think you kind of have the best of sort of many of the worlds of Borg. It's small, it's modular, it's portable. I mean, a 90 millimeter scope brings in enough light, but yet it still has that wide field. I feel like that's like the pinnacle of the Borg design. And I think and we went back and forth, Roger and I, a little bit, and he mentioned maybe even the 107, but the
Hmm.
107 is a different beast. It weighs more than my Takahashi 100 DC, which I don't think I would give up against any other 100 millimeter scope or 100 millimeter plus scope until I got something pretty substantial, just because of the planetary performance on it. So I really think you've got the scope, Roger. I think the non-EFL,
Hmm.
and then in combination, he's got the 122 millimeter Sivbany triplet, which I think uses FPL 51, but in a triplet combination and at f7, I think probably that's going to give about the color correction of a Borg 125. I kind of I don't really see, if you put them side by side, I don't see that the 125 really exactly, um, you know, crushing, 122 millimeter triplet of quality glass. And I think many of these scopes that SV Boni, Askar, and the others are putting out, from what I gathered, and I've looked at a lot of the online testing and stuff that people have done, they all look pretty good, you know,
Hmm.
for the most part, to my eye anyway. And I haven't really looked through as many in the field, but the ones that I have looked through have all been really good. So I think it's a tough, unless you're like and I don't like to think of myself as a telescope collector, but I suppose considering I own this very rare Borg, I own a TMB 7-inch Achromat, I own a Santel 6-inch, I have a comet catcher from Celestron. These are my instruments. I feel like I am some sort of a rare telescope aficionado now of some sort.
Yeah, that's a good point. You are. I forgot about that Santel in the mix as well, as well, which is a very intriguing Maksutov that was only available for a limited time.
Yeah, and pretty old now in the way they built it. And I mean, you could get Inta's ones, but the Santel ones were slightly better, reportedly. And this one is quite amazing.
Hmm.
But regardless, I compared my friend Rudy, sadly who passed away, had the Takahashi FS128, which I think is or was F8 or just under F8. Might have been like 7.7 or 7.8. Anyway, he and I spent like 2 or 3 nights, like consecutive in a row. One spring, that spring that I got this all worked out, testing them. And there were a few very striking things. And I have photos of them set up. I should dig them up and put them online because whatever. I guess I don't have to ask for Rudy's permission anymore. Um, and I don't think he would mind anyway, considering he's funded a whole telescope museum. But when we compared those, the two things that were striking is that it was impossible for anybody looking at these two telescopes set up side by side to imagine that my telescope and his telescope were essentially 5-inch telescopes, his being like whatever, 3 millimeters larger. It just seemed unfathomable because that FS128 is a massive, huge telescope, and my telescope really looks more like an 80 millimeter telescope. But when you looked through them, the images were so close. And I would say that my telescope performed about like 85 or 90% of what Attack FS 128 did. And that's a pretty good call on it, considering the way it was built, the size, weight, and whatever. And you could see that mine had just slightly more color, but it was, boy, like you really had to go back and forth to see it. It was so close. Um, but that was sort of the comparison. But I don't, I don't think it's a scope that I would necessarily recommend because I don't think somebody could get one with the temperature compensating cell in it unless you somehow got confirmation that it had one. Then it would be an easy recommendation. How much is that telescope worth? Like I would never part with mine, and I want to get it modified. I want to put a moonlight focuser on it now because it has a telescoping helical type big thing on the end that I've put a feather touch on, and I want to just put a proper solid focuser on it because it bends under the 3 pound Explorer eyepieces. Yeah, I mean, I'll just keep that scope forever because it is so supremely useful. But it is big too, Shane. Like it's still big even for a 8 or 9 pound scope. It's big.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's still 125 millimeters, and yeah, the form factors is not small at all with that one. But if I were you, I would be doing the exact same thing. I don't believe I would ever let that telescope go somewhere else because it's so unique and is just a great, great performer.
Yeah. And my real thing is wide field observing, and I want to be able to run a lot of power at the same time. That's and it may seem strange, it may seem like everybody wants to do this, but I don't think so. I think most people are going to be much, much happier with a more easily obtainable F7 or F8 instrument that's going to be easier to mount, easier to work with, that's going to give you both really great planetary views for what it's worth and reasonably wide field. Like, I mean, I'm really pushing the limits on wide field. I really push the limits on high power, and like recently, and configuring my things, as you'll see here, to run at 430 plus magnification on my 7 inch. I think there's just not that many people out there who are looking to do that with refractors, but people can let us know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to just read this short one from Russell?
Yeah. So he said, "Hi, Chris. We're in the middle of no observing possible season due to pretty much constant clouds in November and December so far. Although yesterday was clear, but it was negative 19 degrees Celsius. I think we were colder than Churchill, Manitoba last night. I wimped out and only stepped outside briefly with binoculars. We have our RASC Montreal Center Christmas potluck tomorrow night, so hopefully we can peek out if there are gaps in the clouds. Keep on gabbing," and that's from Russell in Montreal.
Thanks, Russell. We had an email from Leonid, who's also in Montreal, I believe, and he was asking me, let's see, how long have you been using guided scopes before having your observatory? And he was also, well, maybe I should say this, is he says, "I've pulled the trigger on motorizing my CG4 mount. There were two options available, one from Celestron, one from Astro Gadgets, and I've gone with the Astro Gadget one, which is out of a Ukrainian outfit." Or yeah. Um, and he asked me how long I have been using guided scopes. So, and this made me realize that maybe I've neglected to mention this, is that I didn't use any kind of guiding scopes or anything like that until I built my observatory. So for decades, just manually finding and looking at stuff. And I hadn't intended really to use the go-to functionality so much in the observatory, but just the way that the AZEQ6, at least the one that I have, seems to work best, and with such a heavy 50-pound payload on it, I'm reluctant to pull a clutch and to push it manually for a whole variety of reasons. And yeah, so I've been using the go-to on it, and what I've been doing though is doing some projects that are more like very difficult to do, sort of in manual scopes, like a lot of observing at extremely high power, and observing a lot at the zenith.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my use cases, and I'm actually using an Astro Gadgets device for this. So I have an Astro Gadget plugged into my hand controller on the AZEQ6. I do the alignment with the mount, and then it takes over, and I run it all from an old iPhone 7 Pro that I just keep charged at the cabin and take up when I want to observe. Because if you walk away too far from the mount, it disconnects, and then you have to reconnect. And every once in a while, you'll have a little bit of trouble reconnecting, particularly if you let your software go out of date. And so that's how I do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just not sure if I ever, because I think I was still fiddling around with it at one point, and then by the time, well, I just like stopped talking about it on the podcast, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. 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 Very cool.
All right. I did some market research, Shane,
On what?
on the telescope market. I was curious about something.
Are you investing?
No, well, always investing, but not in telescope stuff. I don't see it as an investment. Maybe I'll put it that way. Okay, so market growth and size. The the astronomical telescope market, Shane, if you can believe it, is $316 million in 2024 projected to be about 342 million US dollars in 2025 and exceed 505 million by 2033. I put the link to the source in there. It seemed like somebody put a lot of time and effort into that, so I don't doubt it. I put the link in there if people want to go take a look. But it just shows that more and more telescopes and more gear is being sold. Not sure how exact those numbers are, but it does kind of make sense. There's more people. I feel like more people are interested in this stuff, particularly since the pandemic. We had that big pop, and I think a lot of people have stuck with it. I would love to know the breakdown between people that want to go and do like photography and get like a little smart telescope that can do photos for them, and those that are just looking up, or a combination of those two things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that it's a growing market. I really wish that I knew like how that market was growing in order to properly prepare people, because I'm not sure. Are people looking for smart scopes, or are people still looking for visual scopes? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I know like when I was even at Grasslands this past summer, observing by myself, you get to talk to other people that are camping near you, and there was a couple other astronomers there, and one of them had a smart scope, and the other one had a C11 or something like that. I can't remember, but was super interested in the smart scope and was looking to buy one because they like, the ease of use and how it can capture images and kind of, is a bit of an easy path, I think, for that portion of it. And a lot of people, when it comes to astronomy, at least new folks, I think, are sometimes brought in through the imaging aspect of the hobby, because they're either photographers, like amateur photographers already, or they've seen all the pictures and they want to capture some of their own. So, I think I think there's still both, sides there, but the smart telescope stuff, I think, is certainly driving more interest.
Yeah, part of me wonders. This is something I really wonder, and that is that people who are getting into this smart scope side of it, and I've looked at the capabilities of these smart scopes, and it's simply stupendous what they can do. It's amazing.
Mm.
You can take it out, you plunk it down. I think it does plate solving, as Richard was talking about our previous episode or next episode or whatever. And it can find the stuff, take photos of it, and that while you do what like like it's so hands off, and it's becoming even more and more hands off, that part of me wonders if people are going to maybe migrate back to visual astronomy simply because like having one of those is so simple. Like, for example, I've even thought of getting one. I have that big platform up by the observatory, which is like for staging, which means, I don't know if that's a common term, but it basically means just for setting up whatever kind of instruments, or people want to just drop stuff there, or if we're working on the observatory, you can put our tools or work on stuff without having to like set up a workbench permanently. But it is like a giant permanent workbench that we've put up there. And I could just take one and set it up there while I go and do my own visual astronomy, and then come back and have photos. I always like to look at photos taken of when I'm observing the object. And I've often thought I would like to get one of these to take to put in the objects that I want to observe. And then at the end of the night, I have photos of the object that I've been able to capture, and then sketches of them, and then my notes, and kind of compile all those together. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I wonder if people are going to get into it and then maybe become more interested in the actual looking at the night sky or other aspects of astronomy.
Yeah, and I like we've had a number of listeners that have gone down that path, right? They came in more with an imaging focus, and I think even is this kind of how you started too? Maybe at one point, I can't remember, but
It is. Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
yeah, that imaging is what I'm going to do, and then you kind of get into it and develop a passion for the visual side of things. Um, So, I think any path is a good path. And for me, I still think a little bit about a smart scope too. I think it would be neat to have a scope doing some interesting imaging on the side while I'm really focused on my visual observing.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's like an easy answer because when I started, as
Mm,
you mentioned, I was super keen just to do astrophotography and I was learning visual astronomy in order to become like a good astrophotographer. But then when I started doing, I had some reasonably good shots, still have them around here somewhere, of like the North American nebula and like the summer Milky Way and all these kind of things. And they were coming out pretty good considering I was just using a hand track mount that I built myself, and I'm not a very good builder of such things. But I just really wanted to enjoy looking at this stuff. That's what happened to me is once I started, looking at it and then doing this in combination, I was like, well, I kind of got to pick one or the other here. It's impossible to do both, but now it's not, right?
Yeah, and like so accessible. Like those smart scopes are really amazing to me.
Yeah. So Shane, with this preamble, what do you
Yeah.
think people need to get started now?
Well, I think our at least for me, the recommendation path hasn't changed much, if at all. Starting just with like a decent pair of binoculars, and kind of that, I don't know, 7 or 8 times magnification and maybe like a 42 millimeter objective would be ideal. Like nice handheld binoculars that don't require a tripod. They're you can usually steady them enough that they're really quite good for astronomy at nighttime. So a pair of binoculars, get yourself a decent star chart. Something like the Pocket Sky Atlas is something that I still recommend. And then a red light that you can dim and tone it down so you have the right amount of light. That's probably the most basic setup I think that somebody could start with and really, really see a lot of things and really enjoy what they've purchased. And the neat thing with binoculars, too, that I like at least, is that I use them for way more than just astronomy. If I go for a hike, if I go travel, often it's binoculars that will be in the bag with me, and then I use them for those purposes too. So very versatile, and that's probably the most basic way in for me.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Um, And then as far as like books or websites to help people get going, what do you think now?
Yeah, so again, Pocket Sky Atlas for star charts. If you're into apps, I'm a big fan of Sky Safari. There's a few different levels of Sky Safari depending on what features you're looking for. So there might even be a free version all the way up to the pro version, which is I don't know, $20 or $30. To me, it's a great price for what you get. But if you also wait for like Black Friday and Boxing Day sales, it often goes on sale. So if you're in the market, maybe just wait a little bit now till Boxing Day, and you probably can get it. Well, in the past, I've seen it for like 50% off. So those would be like my main resources again as a beginner. Now, if you want to really get into some niche things, there's all sorts of guides out there for like the Messier objects or NGC or Herschel, and many, many more by various authors. Although one of the guides that seems to come out the most frequent for me is super old, but it's the 3 volume Burnham Celestial Handbook. I really love the writing style. I love everything that's in there. I know there's errors, but it's still a fantastic series that has a lot of staying power even today.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like the traditional Night Watch by Terrence Dickinson,
Mm,
who I think it's been taken over by other folks, but kind of kept in the same vein. I think Ken Hewitt White is involved, who's a great astronomer from the West Coast, and just sort of updating it and helping to guide people along. I think that makes a great starting point. And the red flashlight, people should
mhm.
get a good red flashlight from a good astronomical retailer. I'll put it that way. People don't, that's the one thing people wait way too long for, I think.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And And it really does make a difference to preserve the night vision. And if you end up with some other astronomers around you, you'll hear about it real quick if you're not using a red light.
Yeah. And then for telescopes, I still really like a lot of the smaller, like, and you can even buy some that are probably going to put you on the path to astro imaging, like the little refractors, 80 millimeter or so. There's lots of them out there, and if you think astrophotography might be in your future, you can probably look at some of the ASCAR or Sharpstar rigs that are coming out. I think they have ones in a whole variety of different price categories.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just get like an ST80 or an 80 millimeter f5 and start there. Or if you're really gung ho on doing visual, I think starting with that 8-inch f6 Dob really can't be beat. If that's something you can fit in your car and are physically able to get and move around, I think that's a pretty good one to begin with as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. There's even like there's still occasional times where I think to myself I should get another 8-inch Dob just because of how versatile it is and how much, light throughput you have. Like it's just the perfect scope. And as somebody who typically observes with smaller refractors like myself, 8 inches of Dobsonian is huge. It really opens up some sky.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think like that's sort of our basic recommendation. I think we've really got it to a few concise points, I think, as well. If you do get binoculars, some good recommendations are if you have the money to spend the Canon image stabilized binoculars. In particular, we like the 12 by 36s because they are the least expensive of the range and kind of give you pretty much about the best performance in the range. The 10x by 42s and the 15 by 50s are a bit bigger and heavier and do cost quite a bit more. Certainly, if you have the money to spend on those, I think they can be awesome too. But in general, I think the 12 by 36s are my recommendation for sort of the price performance on those image stabilized binoculars.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. My favorite binocular by far, and that's one like the ones that I have are really really old. Gosh, I think I've had them over 10 years, maybe getting into 15, and they've been dropped many times, and they've had a bit of a rough life. They still work, but they're starting to show some signs of the age. When those things die, that will just be an automatic repurchase because those 12 by 36s to me are just perfect. I always want to have a pair.
Yeah. And I bought the newer ones a few years ago, and they're just as good, maybe even a hair better, and
Hmm.
yeah, and they're awesome. And then for non-image stabilized binoculars, like the Pentax, pretty much all the Pentax ones and the Nikons are all pretty good. Just look for eye relief. Make sure that the eye relief is the distance between the eye lens and where the image comes to focus. If you need to wear glasses, like I do anyway, you want to make sure that has around 18 or more millimeters of eye relief, so that as your glasses press up against the eye cups of the eyepieces in the binoculars, that the image will be fully displayed, and you don't have to either take your glasses off or mess around with things too much. And then you can get these little L adapters for 25 or $30 from an astronomy store to attach those to a tripod to stabilize those if you don't feel like going down the image stabilized route.
Hmm. Hmm.
Fairly simple. Fairly simple,
Yes.
Shane.
Yes. Keep.
Anything else to add to that? People can look at the Backyard Astronomer's Guide too, in addition to Night Watch, in addition to the Pocket Sky Atlas. Other good books to get started if you're really into this is the Binocular Astronomy by Craig Crossan. Is a really nice text as well. And then I'll second your recommendation on the Burnham Celestial Handbook is just a great sort of traditional way of getting yourself interested in visual astronomy and all that it has to offer.
For sure.
Cool. All right. So Shane, what do you have anything inbound and what's on your, I don't want to say Christmas wish list, but what's on your interested to buy list for astronomy stuff? I feel like I know at least one of the things based on. your conversation.
Yeah, well, my list is pretty small. I'm super happy with my everything that I have. I really have my dream set up in many regards. But the one thing that has been on my list now for a little while, and I've talked about it on a few episodes, and if you listen to the most recent episode last week, you would that's a bit of a spoiler here, but what I've been considering is a smaller travel mount that is compatible with the Nexus digital setting circles. I've just become addicted to the digital assistants. I love how fast it is. When you're traveling, if you have a digital assistant, you really can get away then without taking star charts even. So like it's one less thing to pack. Um, but the problem with the Nexus setting circles is that you have to find a compatible mount or probably do some manual, I don't know, trying to like adapt the encoders to the mount, because the way it works, you have like the Nexus computer, which is your interface and, tells you where to point your scope, all that stuff. But you need two encoders on your mount on both axes. So anyway, I was going down that path. There's not a lot of options for a lightweight mount. And this was about 6 months ago or so when I discovered the Pi Finder. It's a digital assistant that can go on any telescope, any mount, and it just works. So we had we had Richard on the last podcast, who's the founder of Pi Finder, and it was a great conversation, and it really cemented my interest. So that is not inbound yet, but expect it to be.
And people should know he did offer to send us one to try, but we like to support these businesses, that are developing the new products, and so a lot of the time we'll buy the product, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Like I've read enough and I've heard enough to know that this is exactly, what I want, and it's going to fulfill a need of mine. And I'm super excited to see how this thing evolves. With an open source community, like even on the podcast, I mentioned or asked if there was any consideration for a voice interface. And, it sounded like kind of maybe lightly talked about, but who knows? It could turn into something in the future as these other developers or Richard himself, builds the code to make that a reality. So I think that that's a super neat aspect of this device as well, that, capabilities and features are just going to get layered in over time.
Yeah. And I had a few ideas and I didn't kick them out on the show too. I mean, just from my own personal interest in that kind of technology and in astronomy, I had a few other ideas that I don't know. I kind of want to see how it works for you. I might even
Mm-hmm.
want to try it. And then there's a few things that I think that sort of device could be good for. Like it really opened my eyes when he started talking about using it as an SQM monitor. I think they've got that built in now, and it has gyroscopes in it. So there's a lot of other functionality you could leverage that for. It just depends
Mm-hmm.
on getting like the like things connected through the softwares. But very, very, very neat. And like we were talking before, like a little bit on the show, but then after the show, just how difficult it is to get your alignment the way that you want it for
Mm-hmm.
certain projects. And it seems like this is the solution for the future. Really do.
Yeah, absolutely. It really seems like that. And when I get it, I'll certainly report on the podcast and then share my experiences with it. But other than that, Chris, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I'm interested in, and maybe if there is, it's just a better way to haul my gear. Just with the Bino viewer and the eyepieces and kind of all of the other stuff you bring out observing, I'm trying to like refine it as much as I can so that I'm not hauling as much with me. And that'll be a little bit of a winter project. It probably doesn't involve me buying anything new, but maybe just reorganizing some of my cases or changing what I actually bring out into the field for a regular observing session.
Mm.
But how about you? I think you've got a few more things on your list than myself.
Yeah, there are nothing too wild, but sometimes I spend so long thinking about something, and just like, well, why don't I just get this? It's not really that expensive. And one of them is a Batter blue filter, CMOS optimized, which is something I've read an awful lot about over the past 4 or 5 years. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think it was like 130 euros. And I'm like, if I got 5 cents for every minute or for every hour I've spent thinking of it, I've probably bought one already. So they're pretty good apparently at helping to bring out reflection in some other nebula and some planetary nebula, which I'm doing a lot of observing of. And so I got one of those inbound. In addition, this year Skywatcher came out with a 5x telecentric Barlow, which is really like ancillary gear. I debated getting a Teleview 5x telecentric Barlow type device, but and then Explorer has one too. But the Skywatcher stuff, I've been pretty happy with it, and this isn't like primary equipment, but I do have a case full of eyepieces on loan from Justin that I really want to push a little bit further, and they're more like in the 20 to 25, or there might be a couple that are small, but anyway, the ones I'm interested in pushing are between 20 and 25 millimeters. And of course I only have a 3x Barlow, and I don't want to start stacking Barlows or anything. It starts to feel ridiculous. So I've splurged and bought $100 and something Skywatcher telecentric to use with those. And then as well, because I've had pretty good success at in and around the 430 magnification with my 7 inch, I want slightly wider field of view, and I can use a 5x on my 12.5 millimeter Docter, which is about an 84-degree true field of view eyepiece versus my 5 millimeter, which I've been barreling 2.1 or 2.2 times for 450 odd power. So I think that's going to be a slightly better setup. Like, this is very fine tuning, eh?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I got to buy a new power brick adapter for the AZEQ6. The one that I have is just it's kind of getting worn. When I first had that mount, and I've been chatting with Mike about this, because he has the same mount. When I first had it, I didn't have the firmware that it's anti-wrap firmware. And what that prevents is the cables from wrapping, and my cables kept wrapping and pulling on it. And I think I
Mm,
went through one already, but this one I noticed that it too is a bit worn. And so, anyway, I got to get another one because the kind of the bare wires are sticking out. Um, and then the other thing that's very much high on my list is to figure out how to do a heated case. And I have that heating piece from Kendrick. I noticed that it's the same one they use in the Wood Wonders cases, and it makes me wonder if maybe I shouldn't just get one of their cases and then slot it in or send it to them, and then they can install it. And I can get a little case. And the challenge I'm facing is that when I want to observe in the morning and it's cold, like, typically on the past mornings I've been observing, it's been between -5 and -13 Celsius. And if I leave the eyepieces up there, well, even at -5, my observatory runs at -2. And so my eyepieces are going to be around -2 when I go up there, and that's too cold to handle with your hands. And of course, they're going to have more dew problems. And I have anti-dew system up there, but it's better just to haul them up. But it's 2 or 3 trips to bring all that stuff up. So I'm trying to figure out a way that I can take the stuff up the day before, the evening before, and have it all sort of warming and ready to go down, sleep, get up at 4 a.m. or whatever, and then go up there and observe without having to like also like do multiple trips up and down, which would tends to wake my wife up as well, because our cabin is like 500 square feet of that. So that's something I'm kind of working on. I already have one of the components for. I'm just not really sure how I'm going to do that exactly, but I do want to be able to warm the eyepieces while they're up there for a whole variety of reasons.
hmm
Um, and I think I want to get a filter wheel. I really have been enjoying the filter slide on the Lumicon multiple filter selector. And that thing is great. It's just I can only put 3 filters in, and I've got another filter coming. I'm going to look at some other filters, and yeah, as well, like they're exposed to the night sky, which isn't much of a deal in the summer. I'm not really that worried about it, but in the winter it gets so frosty here.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm doing so much more observing in those conditions that I kind of want to have them not quite exposed to the night sky as they are currently. Generally, not the best idea.
Yeah. Is that a 2-inch filter wheel that you
Oh
would want?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For all my
Okay.
filters are, except for the planetary ones, all the filters are 2 inch. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I have an inch and a quarter one I could give you, but um, not a 2-inch, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. So that's a thought. They start kind of, they're not too expensive, but I'm kind of just starting to look at those. Um, and then as well, I have two observing chairs ish. So I have a stool that I use at my desk that can fit under the desk, which is awesome in the observatory because I can actually just push it under the desk in the observatory, and then I can wheel it around for. That's like my favorite thing to sit on and observe because it rotates. It's super comfortable. Has a tiny little back on it. I built it myself out of just parts I bought from Amazon. It was really weird, Shane, because I built it about a year ago, or maybe in the spring last year. I can't remember, but it's really great because it can be expensive to find a nice little office stool. But what I did is I just bought the replacement parts for about four or five different office stools, and it ended up costing me like $100 because they just sell them at cost almost. And
Mm.
I don't know if they still do that or not, but I was able to build this great little stool for almost no money, and it really is quite awesome. And it's been up there in like -20 now, and it totally works fine, which I thought I would be buying another one every year, but so far so good, no trouble with it.
Well, that's good.
Um, but there's a few positions that it doesn't quite go low enough for, and also it doesn't go high enough for. And then I have an observing chair that goes a little higher, but sometimes the eyepiece is, I have to look through it standing, and it's a little difficult to stand and try to sketch. So I've been thinking about getting one of the cat's perch chairs.
Yeah, not cheap.
They aren't. No, this would be one of the more expensive things that I'm thinking of. Um, but it is, and I have the observatory, so I have the room, and so it's not like something I have to haul up or around, and it would fit well in the observatory. So I might go with that, and then just relegate my Burla back to on the road observing kind of thing.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on filters. I have one coming. There's a couple other filters I've been thinking about for a long time, again, like 4 years, as the Batter 2-inch H beta narrowband 5.5 nanometer, and then maybe a 6 nanometer O3. Still kind of kicking around some ideas with those. And you want to have a scope in about the 8-inch size range. It seems though some people have had success with smaller instruments, particularly binoculars, but I think I'm in that size range for light collecting power. I would definitely say that my scope equates to more closer to a 10-inch, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. Like the views through it definitely remind me of like a 10-inch Newtonian for sure.
Yeah. So I think I have the light for it, and might just try it out. And I can always sell them if they don't work out. But
Hmm.
and if I end up getting some of these filters and that and the filter wheel to work the way I want, then I think I'm eventually going to upgrade to one of the higher end batter diagonals, maybe even the BBHS, which has the silver coating.
Hmm.
Simply because, like, you have the observatory and the TMB scope and kind of these kind of filters, and then like my old Lumicon diagonal, and then I've kind of had these other diagonals in the interim for the past few 3 or 4 years now, 4 years, I guess. And they've been great, but just to kind of have sort of a more easily usable package, because having the big filter selector on the diagonal that I currently have isn't the easiest thing to move around, and I think I just need to redo that whole system a little bit. I really like it. I won't observe without having the filters there now, just because of the way my observing has changed. But the way that I have them isn't working out. If I was just using them like that once in a while, or if you're just going to a dark sky once in a while, it's totally fine. That's kind of how I used it, and that was
Hmm.
great. But when it's like this is how I observe every single night now, pretty much, then it's not like the ideal setup for like a permanent long-term observing situation.
Hmm.
Really want to get a pair of those 6 by 32 Sky Rover 12-degree binoculars. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but again, wouldn't mind getting something like 4.5 Delos at some point in time. Although I want to see how this 5 millimeter works out first, or the 5X Barlow works
Mm,
out. And I mentioned
yeah.
this earlier. I want to get a focuser, a Moonlight focuser for the 125 SD. I want to get one of those sometime too. Again, not cheap.
Yeah, lots of stuff. The Delos would be really close to your Pentax 5 millimeter. Um, or is that going to be something you would Barlow down for real high power?
Well, maybe, but it's like once you get into 1,080 millimeter focal length, like uh, the 5 millimeter is 216. The telescope always takes 216 power. Oh,
Hmm.
and it doesn't always take 300 magnification. And so what is the just a sec, what is the 5? The 4.5 is 1080 divided by 4.5 is 240. And you can see the difference between 215x and 240x is enough of a difference. Like, I mean, I can see 25 power difference. I'm sure you can too.
Hmm.
And at that aperture, that's probably a better sort of regular magnification. I think the telescope will almost all any night that really is worth observing, that telescope will do around 250 power. I theorize, but it's a really difficult power for me to hit. I have a lot of trouble hitting between 220 and 300x just with my eyepieces that I have.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm trying to figure that out a little bit more. And that eyepiece sort of gets me into the sort of early middle of that range. And so that would be an eyepiece that I might get eventually.
Cool.
Another one I want to get is at some point I really want to get a Vixen R200 8 inch. Like you
Mm.
were saying, you were talking about getting an 8 inch, and I think like something like a Vixen R200. I've always wanted that scope for a whole variety of reasons, and at some point I want to get one. It's my dream scope for travel, I think, where I would either take it or send it down. Like I'd like to at some point do 2 or 3 months in New Zealand or Australia or somewhere, and probably more New Zealand than likely anywhere else is where we go, because my wife has some collaborators in New Zealand, and we had planned to go there before the pandemic. Then we had the pandemic, and it was delayed, and then they decided to do whatever before New Zealand opened back up, and so we didn't get to go. But our plan was to go and do a few months down there, and so sometime in the next 4 or 5 years, I think we'd like to try to get down there for like a winter or something like that, and give that a whirl. So anyway, that would be the instrument for that. And then I don't know, some sort of retrofit on the 12 point. I have a really nice 12.5 inch mirror, and that's sort of at the bottom of my priority list is to do something with that. Not really sure what yet though.
Hmm.
And that's it.
That's it. That's all.
That's it. That's all. Yes, some sort of weird and wacky stuff, but really what I'm doing right now is tweaking the 7 inch. Like it's taken a while to kind of get the observatory to this sort of finished point. There's some really, really fine tweaking that we're doing, and I need to put an extra coat of paint on it because there's a couple spots where boards meet together that like a little bit of water like will drip 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 in here and there a couple times, and I think it just needs a couple more coats of paint on the outside, and that kind of thing, but it's done. And then it's just tweaking the telescope to make sure that it's kind of working exactly the way that I want. Got a few things to swap around still, but I think this filter business, like I really like using filters and use them a lot, and kind of getting this kind of worked out is like the next bit of the project.
Right on.
Yeah, but this will probably take me, I don't know. It could take me to I'm so reluctant. Like it takes me a long time to buy stuff because I'm so reluctant to spend the money or whatever. Like I said, I spent almost 5 years dithering on buying a €130 filter. So this could take me a long time to get through at that rate. Cool. All right. Anything else, Shane? Anything we missed here?
No, I think we covered it all, Chris.
All right. Well, folks, if you want to get your name in for the Patreon RASC Observers Calendar Draw, all you have to do is become a Patreon supporter. And where can they do that, Shane?
Just patreon.com. Get yourself an account and search for Actual Astronomy, and you'll find us there.
Super. All right. And thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know, and you can always email us at actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.